I'm Leo Warder for Kit Guru, and today I am very pleased indeed as I have the first MSI Vortex in the UK, specifically the model code MSI Vortex G65 6QF. That's to do with the spec of the thing. It has a pair of GTX 980 desktop graphics in SLI. There is another model 6QD which has GTX 960 in SLI. We have the super duper high-end model. So this tiny PC is driving this whacking great big 4K display. Let me just start that benchmark running. So GTA 5 usual Kit Guru settings, which is pretty much everything on max apart from anti-aliasing, because that's just a complete killer, and I'll just let you watch that while I chat. So Vortex, I think you'd have to be slightly naive to not think it looks a little like the Apple Mac Pro. It's slightly triangular in shape from above rather than totally cylindrical, but other than that, all the hardware in there is cooled by a central heatsink chimney type arrangement, and the hot air exhausts from the top, cool air drawn in from the bottom. It's a lovely idea. Apple's Apple Mac Pro is a superb piece of design, and here we have the Windows PC equivalent. So the hardware is PC rather than workstation. We're talking Core i7 6700K Skylake, therefore Intel Z170 chipset to drive that along. We've got a pair of GTX 980 desktop graphics chips in there. Each of those has 8 GB of memory, so a total of 16, although when you're in SLI that becomes a bit moot. MSI tells us that the spec of the graphics is slightly cutesy actually. They have a kind of extra control thing going on. They were given by NVIDIA, which the wording left me a little bit cool, but basically lower clocks, lower power when the things are idling and running in a low power state, and then it whacks up to full desktop Monty when you're under load. So at idle, I was seeing the thing at various speeds, including down to 100 and something megahertz, but 540 megahertz appears to be the low speed state, and then at full chat, 1202. Memory is the standard 7010 effective, allowing for the fact it's GDDR5. So that's all great. The processor is running at the stock 4.2 gigahertz. You can use MSI's Dragon's Enter software to overclock to 4.6 or 100 megahertz increments, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I ran it at 4.6. It took an extra 20 watts to do so. It didn't actually yield any obvious benefits because the processor is clearly these days not the limiting factor in any modern PC, provided other hardware is up to the job. Whether you go from 4 to 4.2 to 4.6, didn't make a lot of odds. Other hardware, so we've got 16 gig DDR4 2133 megahertz, a pair of M.2 SSDs. They are NVMe, PCI Express, all the usual, 128 gigabytes apiece, times 256, take off a bit for formatting, and that's plenty for Windows and apps, not really enough for your games library. So added to that, you've got a 1 terabyte 7200 RPM hard drive, and then networking is all killer. So you've got a pair of Ethernet, and you've also got the latest Wi-Fi from Killer. I did a thing on Killer from Rivet Networks relatively recently, and it stacks up very well indeed against the latest offerings from Intel, so that's all good. Warranty is 2 years, and I happen to know that because I had this thing upside down looking all around it, and there's actually a sticker on the very bottom saying 2-year warranty, so that's nice. The power supply inside this thing at the bottom, they describe it as a custom power supply. Again, as with the Apple Mac Pro, essentially if you take all the casings and all the protection off a lot of equipment and the heat sinks and such like, everything shrinks down. The power supply, when it's basically stripped of all its outer, becomes a very small thing indeed. And power supply in this is a 450 watt power supply. I saw the max power load I saw actually in 3D Mark was just around the 300 watts. So 450 may not sound a lot. It would seem, on the other hand, there's a fair amount in hand. My figures again on Kit Guru, photos also on Kit Guru. When I was testing this, I found that the two GPUs ran at slightly different temperatures. I was getting what I think of as a secondary GPU is running about 6 degrees cooler than the primary, but in the great scheme of things, nothing too much to concern us there. Noise depends on how you have the fan set. The Dragon Center software I'll show you in a moment when this benchmark finishes allows you to control the lighting and also the CPU speed and fan control, and you can basically whack it up high, turn it down low. This is on default and works very nicely. I found in my testing that the CPU under extreme load, and I'm talking there using Cinebench, which basically is rendering graphics. So it's a benchmark, but it's a legitimate test. That was CPUs up to 80 degrees. In ADA 64, which is a synthetic stress test and is entirely unnatural because it puts the thing just under complete load, the CPU went up to 90 degrees and was starting to throttle. And that actually says to me that MSI has done a very sound job here. They've got to balance the compromise between processor, graphics, the cooling, the fan speed, the fan noise, the airflow, everything just works properly. Completely happy. Benchmarking figures are a little bit of an oddity. I was actually comparing Vortex with an MSI Titan laptop I saw relatively recently, which was dual GTX 980s. Obviously the chassis was a completely different animal to this. And actually I found the Titan benchmarks slightly faster, measurable number of frames per second faster, which slightly baffled me. I don't have an answer for that yet. On the other hand, if you don't benchmark two machines at the same time in the same place, I'm not sure you can necessarily draw any massive conclusions from that. But upshot was that Titan performed well. I was expecting slightly more from it. I'm going to suspect it's a driver thing for the time being until I know more, because the graphics aren't exactly stock GTX 980s. Anyway, this is all flashing away, so I'm going to cancel out of this and call up the Dragon Center software, which looks like this. It's the sort of control software that you would expect to see actually these days, the sort of liquid cooling setup from like NZXT or Corsair. The software is immediately familiar. Here we have the performance sort of monitoring and control software, and I've got the thing in sport mode rather than eco, because why don't buy a top-end PC and then slow it down, but I'm using it at stock clocks, and the fan speed is left on auto, which worked absolutely admirably. When it's sitting here idling, it's very quiet indeed. When it's under load, you can certainly hear it. It cools down quite quickly and then quietens down quickly. We're talking a matter of, call it 10 seconds perhaps, from running at full Monty to quiet, and I'm entirely happy with that. LED Wizard looks exactly as you'd expect. You've got an RGB kind of wheel. You can choose whether you're going to have the thing breathing or pulsing or flashing or just static, but the lighting I like, and it works well. It's a neat setup. They do have modes there that frankly get a bit annoying, but no problem at all. Let's just shut it down and give you a quick tour around the hardware. And the main thing really to note about Vortex is how little there is to see. Air in the bottom, air out the top. On the front we have the power button, we have the LED strips around it, MSI logo, and in terms of I/O, absolutely nothing on the front whatsoever. Headset jacks and such like, forget about it. On the back, on the other hand, it's a different story. So we have here, and it's all kind of pairs, we have the pair of killer Ethernets which you can hook together for simultaneous connections to the same router, or indeed to two different routers. There we have a pair of HDMI. There we have 4 USB 3.0s, headset jacks and optical SPDIF there. And under here we have a pair of mini display port and a pair of USB 3.1 Type-C Thunderbolts. So that's 6 super duper fast USBs, and inside you've got your latest killer AC Wi-Fi along with Bluetooth. Basically everything you could want. The only thing you can sort of say that's negative about that is that it's on the wrong side. But once you've got everything hooked up, you're absolutely laughing, and we fully expect to see many peripherals that use the Type-C USB 3.1, so you can add multiple ports. But the 4 display connections, so the 2 mini display ports, the 2 HDMI, the graphics support triple displays with the full surround view. So many options there. Photos on KitGuru for a closer look. All the facts and figures also on KitGuru, but of course the question is, what's it look inside the casing? And this is what it looks like inside Vortex. To get inside, I've undone a couple of screws, pulled off a rear panel, undone a couple more screws and pulled off the 2 side panels. I call them the sides, I suppose they're really angular panels. Getting inside, not especially difficult, but you do have to have a sort of certain amount of determination, because after all it is a £3,000 PC you're opening up. Furthermore, you're removing a do not tamper with this warranty type of sticker. So this is clearly not intended to be user serviceable, which is another differential between the Vortex and Mac Pro. Mac Pro you can upgrade, this not. Well, you can, but you shouldn't. That's really the point. If we take a quick tour, so we've got the exhaust vents on the top, we've got the air intakes on the bottom, and then we've got one whacking great heatsink, another whacking great heatsink, and there is a third, plus various cards. So although it looks very technical, it doesn't exactly look interesting. So there we have one of the M.2 SSDs. Here we have some DDR4, and at first glance, if you can tell which heatsink does what, you're actually doing rather well. The clue is that there's a ribbon cable there which says PCH on this end and CPU on that end. So this is the CPU board, that therefore the CPU cooler. So it follows these other two coolers are for the graphics. But three things, three coolers, one chimney, one vent, well, three grills on the top and then one exhaust. So that is what is going on inside. What do I think about Vortex? I'm certainly impressed. I'm very impressed by Vortex. When I first saw Mac Pro, my first thought was, apart from that, it was, goodness me, that's a clever idea, was when are we going to have a PC version or PC version? Here we are, brilliant. The fact that MSI has gone down the Core i7 and GTX route rather than the Xeon Fire Pro or Quadro route, I fully understand that. Having said that, I would like to see someone qualify a workstation, an actual proper workstation in the same format. The concern is that it would cost even more. Well, not I see any reason why it should cost more. It's just if a PC costs this much, a workstation costs more, and that would make it a terribly expensive workstation. I do feel that MSI has slightly overpriced Vortex, but then they must have sunk a lot of money into the engineering to develop this unique product. So fair play to them for that. You have to hope the price will come down in time. I don't have a great deal of hope it will, because realistically, how many people are going to spend this sort of cash on a gaming PC stroke working PC? Let's call it a working PC rather than a workstation. I think that's a good compromise. You can quite clearly render video and such like this with this Vortex, no problem at all. Core i7, dual graphics, wahey is what I say. So overall, Vortex, very good indeed. Also welcome, hugely welcome, because it's different, and different is so rare in this day and age. You know, oh, it's a bigger tablet, oh, it's a thinner laptop. Yes, I know Mac Pro kind of came first with this central chimney exhaust doohickey, but what the heck, never mind that. MSI has delivered us a PC with decent gaming hardware. The result works well. The I/O is very much next gen, which is also to be welcome. The fact there's nothing on the front, you understand that from the styling point of view. It'd be easy to connect some headsets or something if you had some extra jacks here, but so be it. It's a shame, but there we go. But the I/O is definitely a nod to this Vortex should be around for a good few years to come. I don't see any reason why other manufacturers couldn't get on the same bandwagon. If the price drops a bit, brilliant, so much the better. But for the time being, Vortex is here. It's unique. It's absolutely fabulous. I love it to bits, and it is an absolute breath of fresh air. I'm Leo Woodard for Kit Guru. This is MSI Vortex.